Hello everyone, I am John, aka The Physicist. You're watching The Physicist channel here on YouTube, and today we are going to be taking a look at bottles. So we have been asked if we can do a little bit more of a deep dive into some of the basics about what we do here. So welcome to the lab, and we're going to talk today about bottles. Now, it may sound like a very simple thing. You just have a product, you put it in a bottle, but there are lots of things to consider. And not least of all, how it's going to make your product look and the status it's going to give, the price you can offer, etc. So we're going to look very quickly at a few of the basics. So the first thing you need to consider is, do you want plastic or do you want glass? Now, these two bottles are both 330 ml. Now, if you were selling a product, then one is, generally speaking, going to offer better perceived quality, more premium finish, which is going to be the glass one. When it comes to glass or plastic, the reason that you would go down plastic, lots of people tell you it's about weight saving, other bits and pieces. There is a case for that, especially when you get to a very large scale. But when we're starting off, really, the value of plastic comes in what is expected. There will be some places that a bottle that is more akin to this kind of thing will be expected to be seen on a shelf over and above a glass bottle. So, for example, if you are doing something which is an active sports pursuit kind of a drink, you wouldn't expect to see that on a glass bottle. It would be a plastic scenario. Other than that, as a general rule of thumb, if you are a small producer, glass is, generally speaking, the way to go. It commands a higher premium. And I'm going to concentrate more on glass, but a lot of what I'm going to say will be able to be applied to plastic as well. So we are going to talk about volume, we're going to talk about neck size, we're going to talk about color, we're going to talk about shape, we're going to talk about decoration, we're going to talk about pricing, we're going to talk about availability, country of origins, and then the pitfalls of whatever you're choosing to do. So let's jump into it. So first, the volume. So how much do you want to be offering your customers in a single serve, or is your product going to be a multi-serve bottle? Now, all of the things we're going to talk about very briefly are going to cross over with one another. And so you can't make a decision about one until you've made another one, and some bottles aren't going to be available in your size and shape, or whatever the case may be. So you may have to come to some compromises, and that's going to be really, really important. The ability to learn when to compromise and when to not. But I can't tell you that. You need to learn that on your own for your own product. So one of the most important things we want to talk about at the very beginning is this bit right here. This is your neck size. Now, let's see if we can get some focusing going on here. Let's have a look. There we go. So when it comes to your neck size, this one here is a common 28 millimeter MCA3 style neck. Now, there's two different types of screw thread, and that's the screw thread on the bottom there, MCA2 and MCA3. That relates to the profile of the screw thread, and this is on glass bottles, of course. In your country, some will be available more than others. In the UK, MCA3 is, generally speaking, more prevalent than MCA2, and capping machines are set up with certain types of heads for certain kinds of screw caps. Now, the reason this neck size is important is because certain products are expected to be of a certain size, and also it is really important to know what kind of neck size because it affects what kind of cap you're going to be able to use. Now, we are going to cover caps in a bit more detail in another video, but to get us started here and now, the easiest cap for most people is going to be one of two things. That's going to be a 26 millimeter crown cork or a crown cap, which is a standard beer type closure. And then this will be the other one. And it's very prevalent in the soft drinks industry, as the crown is most prevalent in the beer industry. Now, this is called a 28 by 15. So we have a 28 millimeter here and a 15 millimeter down to here. And just inside this little portion there, that is where the cap would normally stop. So a 28 by 15 allows for a 28 by 15 mil ROPP or plastic cap. If you want to make your life simple, you can do that. There are obviously other options. I'll go to the shelf, and I must have one here. In the spirits industry, this is some wonderful Mauritian rum. In the spirits industry, you have these as well, which is corks. And those that have any, either 21.5, 22 mil cork. The difference being as to whether you want to make it pilfer proof. Now, let me pick a cap. So what is pilfer evidence? So on this bottle here, there was a cover over the top, and when you took it off, it left this behind, and you could see whether the bottle was open or not. On a crown cap bottle, so this standard size here, you can tell if it's been opened because you can't put it back on again, and these will be flared. On a bottle such as these, they come with this here, which is a tamper evident ring. You know, the kind of ones you have to rip them off when you open your bottle, and when you do, they will be left behind on the neck of your bottle. And when it comes to glass bottles, your caps tend to have tamper evidence built into them. Now, if you choose any other kind of closure, so for example a T-cork or something similar, you won't be able to have the tamper evidence. And that can be a real big pain, especially if you're going into retailers where they want to know for certain that the product is okay. Now, we'll come on to that in caps later, but your bottle dictates the kind of cap that you use. So, for simplicity, whatever country you're in, if you're making it yourself, you will probably go for a plastic cap similar to this, unless you're going to invest in some equipment for some roll-on pilfer proof. Otherwise, you will probably be contract bottling, in which case a 28 by 15 ROPP MCA of either 2 or 3, depending upon your contract bottler, they will tell you would be the most useful one. So that is your neck size. Now you can go bigger, you can go smaller, and they are dependent upon the application in use. That's going to be entirely up to you. We can talk about that another time, maybe. The next choice is what color you want. So this clear bottle isn't called clear. The technical name for this is Flint. Of course, that's in the UK and the US, but it may be different in your country. Flint bottles are clear. You then have amber, you then have green, and then there are other variants as well. So, for example, we don't have any up here that I can see, but we have some vintage glass which has got a green tint. You can get blue. You can kind of pick a color and it will be available somewhere, or you can have it custom made. However, what are the reasons for picking the different kinds? First of all, availability, but we can come on to availability in a minute. Number 2, a clear bottle will allow sunlight into it, but it will also allow your product to be seen. If you were to pick an amber brown bottle or a green bottle, your product cannot be seen. However, they do have other benefits. So a green colored bottle, which is often used for apple juices, it cuts back some of the sun's rays, same with wine, and you don't get the effects of oxidation from the sun. Likewise, an amber bottle, you can't get oxidation or anything else from the effects of UV light from the sun. What it also does as a side benefit is it stops any color changes being noticed. And that's actually, historically speaking, for some of the color changes. So once you've picked your bottle neck size, the volume, and your color, then we need to talk about the shape. Now, everyone wants to have a really pretty bottle. And we're talking about sort of those skittle-shaped bottles, something different. And the question is, well, why are so many bottles quite simple, quite plain? Well, the reason for that is because if you have a really sexy bottle, you have to then somehow apply a label to it. Now, that sounds obvious, but it isn't. If you try to apply a flat label to a flat bottle, that label is going to stick. However, as soon as you try to apply a flat label to a curve, so let's say on a skittle-shaped bottle, you have then got to make your label exactly the right shape. Otherwise, you are going to get all kinds of creasing. Not only that, you have to find some way of applying them. And there are specialized machines for applying those kinds of labels, but they are very expensive. So they're not the most popular kind of machine. And if you are looking to get into bottling, you are going to need a low barrier of entry. Somewhere with a machine that will do that kind of label will have a high minimum order quantity. At the beginning, keep it simple, stupid. Go with a simple, straight-sided bottle. Pretty is lovely, but pretty is not going to keep you on the shelf at a commercial price at the beginning. There are other options, of course, and we can come on to that in another episode, or about decoration, things like shrink sleeving, etc. Let's also talk about price. So, glass being made by the million in heavy industry, in foundries, and whatever the case may be, is actually relatively cheap. It is also 100% recyclable into another glass bottle. A PET bottle, so plastic is generally speaking PET, HDPE is the cloudy colour plastic. So a PET bottle can be recycled, but it, generally speaking, isn't recycled back into another bottle because it will never be the same colour. So that is virgin hydrocarbons turned into these kinds of bottles. The other thing you want to be aware of is consistency and availability. Now, we use a lot of this kind of bottle in what we do here, and we recommend it to customers. Why? Because it is pretty cheap. It is very, very available. Now, as soon as you start going into less popular bottles, and by less popular, I can mean only selling tens of millions instead of hundreds of millions a year, they will have to take their turn in the glass manufacturer's run. And if they're not very popular, they won't make too many of them, and if they don't make too many of them and they run out, you may have to wait 6 months for availability. So if you pick a popular bottle in a popular size, of a popular colour, in a popular shape, you will have availability of that 24/7, 365 days a year. That is good for your business. The other thing you want to think about is the country of origin. So this bottle here I know is made in the UK, and this is, I believe, from the Alloa plant up in Scotland. I can tell that because I can read the punt marks on the bottom. If you are buying your glass from another country, then you will have to worry about whether they're going to get stopped at customs, how long it takes to get here, and lastly, I would advise at the very beginning at least, go with something that is available and not from China. It's very tempting to buy cheap glass from China, but cheap glass is cheap glass for a reason. This bottle here is made by a company called Owens of Illinois. It's a very good bottle. It is widely available, it is strong, it is sturdy, it is okay for both pressure of carbonation and can be okay for pasteurization and carbonation. It has a 5% vacuosity, which is a very boring technical detail, but it means that there's enough space for the product to expand if it goes through pasteurization. There's also enough space for the caps to stay on under high levels of carbonation. It's not the most exciting bottle in the world, but it will work. And it will work without shattering randomly, without 1 in 10 bottles randomly exploding on the production line. These are problems you may get if you buy cheap glass from China. As a contract bottler, I won't use cheap glass from China. I won't allow it into my factory. It causes a risk to my production line. It causes a risk to my reputation if those products go out and they're known to be made by me. It also causes a risk to my staff, which is unbelievably important to me. So I would say at the beginning, go with what works and be very careful about how you choose to dress your bottle, the decoration, and see if you can do more with that than by trying to be clever. The amount of people I've had to come through the doors and said, I've spent 5 years, I've now got the perfect bottle, the perfect label, the perfect design. That is all true, because I've had to scrap it all. And in a 5-minute conversation, I said to them, listen, you can't do all of these things unless you make 250,000 bottles, 1 million bottles, because all of the things you want are only available at really high volume processes. You can't start small. So be aware of what you need to do and work to that, and then try and add the things that you'd like to do afterwards. So what are the pitfalls when you go and try to choose a bottle? The most common pitfall I see is by trying to be too different. Now, it may sound a little bit counterintuitive, but as soon as you start going away from a relatively standard bottle with a relatively standard closure, obviously all these things are relative, with a standard closure, you're making life more difficult for yourself, you're making it more difficult for the processor. There will be people that will be able to get away with it. Where you are in the world, whether it be in the UK, the USA, India, Mexico, I have no idea. Wherever you are, your contract bottlers will have a different standard to what we do. But if you step outside of that, things get expensive and difficult very, very quickly. Picking a bottle that you can apply a label to and a cap to simply will reduce your cost and allow you to scale very fast. Do anything else and you're going to make it very, very difficult. picking a cap which doesn't have tamper evidence, and you need to do some kind of tamper evidence over the bottle or the cap, and most likely by hand, will cause you problems. So that is, I hope, a very simple, brief run through of bottles. We've got volume, pick it right, neck size, color, shape, consistency, country of availability and supply, and whether or not you should use ultimately glass or plastic. If you have any questions about any of those, let me know in the comments down below. I hope this has been useful for you. If you've got any comments to tell us what you would like to cover in more depth, or what you'd like us to cover next, we will be covering closures and labels, other bits and pieces as well, hopefully in the very near future. So if you have any comments, then please let us know, and we'll see what we can do to help. In the meantime, I'm John, I've been the physicist. Thank you for watching, and I'm signing off until next time.